Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and honoring Neal Cassady. Hey. I just want to say what a treat it is to be back in Denver always and to see a place that honors one of its own native sons. And finally, after a few weeks, maybe years, decades, people are beginning to realize that the person that influenced Jack Kerouac to come here in 1947 through 1949 to this beautiful, unique, incredible city of Denver was really a pretty amazing person himself. And thanks to his daughter Jamie, who's here this evening, and other people who appreciate Neal as an extraordinary person, we're beginning to honor someone in their hometown. And by that, honoring the hometown itself, which to all of us who visit here, as I did in 1945, wish it was our hometown, but if it's not, every time we come back here, we feel we still hope it will be someday. Just beautiful to be back here, and especially at this place. So without further ado, we're going to begin with a piece written by someone that Jack and Neal knew about before a lot of other people who were au courant ever paid attention to, named Sonny Rollins. And when I played with Charles Mingus in 1955, I met Sonny, and he showed me this tune that his folks had known as a folk song in the West Indies, and which he made into a jazz classic. And as I'm sure you'll notice, it's called St. Thomas. Thank you. For those of you who might have come in late, these wonderful musicians who we're blessed to be with are here tonight to celebrate the spirit of jazz, world music, literature, painting, art, and human relationships among people over the years, to show the civilized, spiritual, soulful, wonderful, fun-loving, crazy, spontaneous, unpredictable, and always unusual, but marvelous part of the American life, which is never quite hits the top schlock of the week, but as John Keats said, proves that a thing of beauty is a joy forever. And playing the bass violin, for those of you who don't recognize him, is one of Denver's and America's great musicians, Mr. Artie Moore. And a wonderful drummer who came in at the last minute when Tony Black's mother-in-law is in very bad health, and he was nice enough to come in. And what a joy it is to get to play with him, master drummer and one of Denver's most popular musicians for a long time, Kevin Smith. And a master of the trumpet, one of our great music educators. We crossed paths, although I didn't know it, in 1968 when he was in high school, and I was already approaching middle age then. I was with the Houston Symphony as a guest conductor. In the first half, we did all classical compositions. In the second half, we played all jazz compositions, and he's the kind of musician who embodies not being one or the other, but being part of the world of quality musics, in the plural, all of which is the definition of what real music is all about. And Neal Cassady knew about that stuff way back, and when he invited Jack Kerouac to come here in 1947 and took Jack over to 5 Points, which is now where Kuvo is located by a miracle, Jack got to see something that he never would have known about his whole life, and that influenced him not only as an author, but as a person and an observer, to find the things of beauty that surround us if we learn to listen and pay attention. And Neal knew all about that and was a brilliant, observant person himself. And the person I'm talking about who embodies that in all of his playing, and he plays with just about everybody we ever heard of in jazz, his own groups, and shares his knowledge with other people and plays up a storm, Mr. Hugh Ragin. One of the people who loved Jack Kerouac's writing and appreciated Neal Cassady, not just as a character, but as the kind of person that he wrote about himself in his work as an aspiring person, was named Artie Moore, who was a playwright that, like Jack, saw the beauty in everyday life and the wisdom that you get from everyday people. And when I did the music for After the Fall in 1964, at the opening of the Lincoln Center Theater, he and the director Neal Cassady loved Chopin, Beethoven, Mozart, Prokofiev, Bela Bartok. They also loved jazz and folk music and world music and anything of enduring value. So I was lucky enough to get to write the music for that. And this is not exactly the way it was in the play, because if it were this long, with audience participation, they would have closed down the theater after they had banished me. So we're going to do the special Denver Neal Cassady 9th anniversary celebration at the fabulous Merc version. So if you have an iPhone and record this would be a little different. And since you're going to be participating, we can all sue each other after the performance because it's ours. Artie Moore was wonderful, and we were lucky. I was lucky to be able to work with him. And this is the extended Rocky Mountain version of the Waltz from After the Fall. Thank you, thank you. Well, this is such a special night, so we're trying to do all music that has a relationship to Neal and what Neal gave for all of us who knew him in some way to have a relationship to the beauty that surrounded and still surrounds and will always surround us if we learn to listen, to pay attention, to be respectful, and to hang out with anybody and everybody in that great, what I call the University of Hangoutology, to be able to be a lifetime matriculating student by gaining wisdom from people all over that can show you a whole lot of stuff if you learn to say please, thank you, and could you show me that one more time, please? I was just down in Havana, Cuba for 8 days after being back from 41 years ago with Dizzy Gillespie, Stan Getz, and Earl Hines as the first North Americans to go there. And 41 years later, I got a call back. And I had a chance to absorb, when I was there so long ago, some of that beauties of Afro-Cuban music, and then to be able to learn over a 41-year period from all the people who played that music. So I went back this time, I was ready to go from kindergarten into the 3rd grade. So for any of you who are studying music, if you're painters, poets, writers, or do anything creative, which we do every day when we think that way, they say to learn Spanish, nunca es tarde para aprender. It's never too late to learn. And that if you pay attention, it's amazing what you can learn. This is a song that we wrote in 1959, speaking of being contemporary. And then I'm going to read a little part, which I've never read in public before, about making the film Pull My Daisy, when I was talking to Neal last in 1965 in San Francisco. But first, this is the lyrics were by Jack Kerouac, Neal Cassady, and Allen Ginsberg, and I did the music, and some of you have heard this before. It's been called by ethno-funkologists and assorted experts the theme song of the Beat Generation. Oy vey. I never knew there was a Beat Generation until I read about it in other people's books years after it happened. We were just a bunch of friends hanging out our own 12-step program of artists, poets, painters, writers, and anybody that wanted to have something besides the white picket fence, the 30 years, getting the gold watch, and croaking quietly. Figured there was something else that America had to offer, and because of that, we were blessed to be around people that were our educators. This is a wonderful song. Their lyrics for the film, which is going to be shown tomorrow night on Colfax Street. I forget the name of the theater. At Alomar. Yeah, it's on. I know it's on Colfax Avenue. That's it. Thank you. I'll be there. And we're going to have Jamie Cassidy's going to talk about it, and so wonderful that she and her husband could be here to represent the family of the extraordinary person that we're honoring. So this is one that Neal enjoyed hearing, and it's from the little known, but now oozing out of the sub-basement of obscurity, thanks to YouTube, where you could see it, and every time they take it down, 3 other people put it up so you could see it for free. Pull My Daisy. You remember this one, you remember this one. Well, here we are at the beautiful Merc Cafe on an evening night. And who knows, it's February 18th, and that seems to be all right. I think I might be off on the date a little bit, but at least I'm in the right month and at least the right year. And that's what happens if you make a mistake, but the rest of your brain is relatively clear. So I encourage all of you to tell your kids that getting stoned is overrated, and that being beatific and seeing the beauty that surrounds us is underappreciated. But you all know that, or you wouldn't be here anyway. So by remaining brain cells tonight, I just want to thank all of you for coming to honor Neal, which is out of sight. Because as a local fella from Denver, USA, people never realize what he gave all of us. And he was so much more than the stereotype of him when he finally got on Ken Kesey's bus. Well, Ken appreciated him, and everyone else did too. And I just want to share with all of you that we hope when this evening is through that you'll go home and you'll know what to do, which is to write a better song and make a better movie than we did long ago. Because with an iPhone and your enlarged vocabulary of knowledge, you can do so much to help our well-needed desire to have creativity each and every day. And it doesn't matter what you call it, because it's going to be beatific anyway. Well, people who rhyme compulsively like this are usually taken away to the nearest place where they're certifiably crazy. So that'll just be the Mercury Cafe 2018 introduction to Pull My Daisy. Daisy, tip my cup, all my doors are open. Hop your heart for coconuts, all my eggs are broken. Hop my heart song, harp my light, lay it on the needy. When you get it, you'll be through, don't ever be greedy. Hop my heart song, harp my light, sorrow's hope be steady. Hip my angel, harp my light, lay it on the needy. Well, when Jack and Neal and Al and I wrote the song way back in 1959, we never thought we'd be here at the Mercury Cafe in 2018 feeling so fine. We thank all of you for coming tonight. Yeah, your presence is barely out of sight. You'll be relieved to know I got nothing else to say, because we got some folks here who can really play on the trumpet better than Gabriel when he used to blow his horn. Let's hear Mr. Hugh Ragin, who did it before many of us were born. said, tip my cup. All my doors are open. Hop my heart for coconuts. All my eggs are broken. Hop my heart song, harp my light. Sarah's hold be steady. Hip my angel, harp my light. Lay it on the needy. Hop my heart song, harp my light. Sarah's hold me steady. Hip my angel, harp my light. Lay, lay, lay. That's the way they used to scat sing right here in downtown Denver, USA. Well, Neal showed Jack all around town when he came here back in 1947. And between 1947 and 1949, when Jack came from Lowell, Massachusetts, New York City, and thought he was in Rocky Mountain heaven, he learned about life and beautiful music and people he never would have seen otherwise, don't you know? And that's why it's such a joy to be with all of you tonight and share the spirit of Neal and the spirit of America's beautifulness in this very special show. So all of you who also want to write, paint, play, and sing, let's not remember what the person who is his biographer and even changed his name from Dean Moriarty in the book really meant to think. Because his father, who only spoke French at home, used to say after work when Jack came from school, so that he would become an overeducated fool. Mon cher Jackie, si tu restes ici toute la vie, sûrement tu seras obligé comme ta mère à travailler toute la vie dans un factory. Which meant, son, you better get out of town if you really know what's going down, because if you stay in Lowell all your life, you're just going to be an ex-football hero and never even afford to have a family or a wife. So Jack, with his football skills and his A+ average in English, got a scholarship to prestigious Horace Mann. And after a year of setting football records and academic ones too, he did better than anyone thought a poor boy from Lowell ever can. And he got accepted into prestigious, ivy-covered, top snobbatissimo NYU's rival, Columbia U itself, and helped to put all those cliches of a working class person on someone else's shelf. But in the third week of practice, he broke his leg, and his football career was over because he knew that he was too proud to ever beg. And he wrote a whole bunch of books, had all kinds of day jobs, and wrote a lot of books, none of which were published, and only one in the town and the country came out, and no one ever knew about it in the first place until way later on. And in 1951, wrote the 10th version of On the Road, not stoned on Benzedrine, but because he had it all in his head from the other 9 versions, like Mozart did when he wrote his symphonies, because he already had to figure it out in his head. And finally, on that great big scroll that was lying there, 6.5 years later, it finally looked like the book was going to be put to bed. And I saw him at the old 5 spot, and he said he was going out, and his road book, he didn't even call it On the Road, was finally coming out. So he was celebrated by going on a tanker to Tangiers to see all his friends over there. And September 7th, Joyce Johnson had sent him a $50 check so that he could possibly, actually it was only $30, I don't want to exaggerate, so that he could come to New York City in case it got one good review. And he and Joyce, what she described so beautifully in her book Minor Characters, went out to the newsstand, and the review was so fantastic neither of them knew what to do. So all these years later, finally we're seeing that Neal not only wrote the first third, but was an influence on a whole generation of people that are still unheard. So for all of you here at the Mercury Cafe tonight, we know that you could write a better song like this and make a better film on your iPhone than we did way back in 1949 when we did the music for this film and tried to get it right. So in the interest of Rocky Mountain spontaneity, Let's all pull our daisy. Thank you, and please thank these wonderful musicians. Because they could take something simple and make something great out of that, and that's what you call being creative on the spot. We're all born to be that way until it gets stomped out of us by higher education saying, "You can't do that. You're not qualified." So I beg all of you, if you have kids, or those of you young folks, if you have parents or grandparents that want to do something creative, as long as you're inhaling and exhaling, you can do it. And if you don't dig it, you can use the greatest technological advancement of the last century called the eraser and the wastebasket. Now in the computer, you can use the delete switch and do it a second time. Maybe you could do it the first time, and if you do it the 100th time and it comes out right, that's cool too. The symphony that I wrote, which was the Colorado Symphony, played, and I was blessed to be able to conduct that great orchestra right here in Denver and have a recording come out, not done by the Bulgarian overseas slave outsource orchestra, but by musicians right from here, of a piece based on Woody Guthrie's. We have at the place where they're selling books and stuff, and if you want to get that, I'll be happy to have you hear it. It was called Symphonic Variations on a Song by Woody Guthrie, This Land. And the second half of the program, Hugh Ragin played the trumpet, and a lot of other people came and played, and that hasn't been recorded yet, but in the next 35 years, we're guaranteed to have that one as well. I don't know if we'll do it here, but we'll do it in some orchestra. When we do, I'll be back here as long as I'm invited, and I'll hobble up and bring a copy of that. But in the meantime, we'd like to do something probably unusual, but it's not that unusual because, as Matt said, Hunter S. Thompson, and that's where I got the badge as an honorary sheriff undersheriff, actually, of Pitkin County, Colorado. I haven't busted anybody yet, but when I was trying to find my daughter's place in Brooklyn, and I got lost, and I tried to make a U-turn when I was parked, suddenly I thought perhaps they had mistaken me for an international criminal. All the cop cars came roaring up. I guess they had nothing to do. They said, "Wow, wow, wow." I said, "Officer, I really apologize. I was trying to find my daughter's place in Brooklyn." And they were ready to start clubbing me. And I said, "I really have to apologize. I should have known better because I had made an undersheriff of Pitkin County, Colorado." So instead of hitting me with his flashlight, he put it on myself. He said, "Let me see your stuff." And I showed him the badge, and he said, "Get out of here." So I called up Sheriff Bob Browdis and said, "Bob, you stopped me from having my head divided like a hard-boiled egg, and I really thank you for that." So that was just a result, like everything else in my life, including being here tonight with these great musicians and all of you, of the good luck that's bestowed upon you if you try to look at things in a positive way. And as you know, the Hunter Thompson really was aware of Neal Cassady, not just as a nutcase that was a story in a book, but quite an extraordinary person. So we'd like to do something by Woody Guthrie himself. And it was here that I was able to be invited to write and record that symphony with your own symphony orchestra. And the person who was named Gene Sobek was responsible for that. And I thought, my gosh, the executive director of a symphony is going to see me playing at a cafe, playing bebop and everything. He's going to think I must be some kind of a numbskull to want to do that. And the first thing he said was how much he admired the people in the band that were coming that night. And I found that he was a bass player. He was extraordinarily creative, loved jazz, loved symphony music, and I was just lucky to be with him. And then he was replaced after we made the recording. And it's still in limbo, but we have copies here, and every place I go in the world, it gets played on the various radio stations. So I think every place outside of Denver knows what a fantastic orchestra you have, and also how much Woody Guthrie, like Neal and a lot of other people, was much more than the stereotype bestowed upon him, and was an extraordinary person. So this is a little piece setting that I did of a wonderful poem by Woody Guthrie, written, I guess, over 70 years ago about the people who feed us and our families, called Pastures of Plenty. And I'm going to find the lyrics because I don't try to freestyle any of the people whose music I play any more than I would when I wrote my Shakespeare opera with Joe Papp. We did all of Shakespeare's words, and we try to do all of Woody's words, because you don't mess with that kind of success. And Pastures of Plenty, I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's one of our great classic songs. And the instrument that I'm going to be playing would be an ethno-funkologist's nightmare, because none of the scholars as yet equate a Chinese hulusai with the music of Woody Guthrie. But when I met Woody on the Lower East Side in 1956, he spent the whole day and night talking about all the places he'd been around the world as a merchant seaman and hitchhiking all through America, and all the beautiful places and people he'd seen. And when he moved to Coney Island, New York, he would walk, when he was in good health, all the way around all 5 boroughs, and he'd see all the different neighborhoods and all the cultures and music and language. So this is one of his great songs, and I'm using an instrument called the hulusai. And the hardest part of the hulusai is remembering where you put it. Here it is. All right. This looks like Al Capone's concealed weapon, but actually it's the case. And it says, a hulusai from China. And Woody admired all the different musics from around the world. And it kind of fits in with the feeling of that song. And after I'd written the symphony, Arlo, Woody's son, and Nora, his daughter, who had commissioned the symphony, came down to jazz at the Lincoln Center to hear me play, and I was going to do that. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe they'll think I'm blaspheming their father. And they said, no, we dig that, man. Do that everywhere. So with their blessing, I'm going to play for you our version of Pastures of Plenty. You'll hear it. It's a mighty hard road that my poor hands have hold. My poor feet have traveled a hot, dusty road. Out of your dust bowl, westward we roll. And your deserts were hot, and your mountains were cold. I worked in your orchards of peaches and prunes. I slept on the ground in the light of the moon. On the edge of the city, you'll see us, and then we come with the dust and we go with the wind. California, Arizona, I gather your hops. Well, it's north up to Oregon to harvest your crops. Dig the beets from your ground, cut the grapes from your vine, to set on your table for your light, sparkling wine. Green pastures of plenty from the dry desert ground, from the Grand Coulee Dam, while the waters run down. Every state in the Union, us migrants have been. We'll work in this fight, and we'll fight till we win. It's always we ramble, that river and I. Along your green valleys I will work until I die. My land I'll defend with my life if it need be. 'Cause my pastures of plenty must always be free. My land I'll defend with my life if it need be. 'Cause my pastures of plenty must always be free. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, since we don't want anyone to have sacroiliac problems by sitting too long in one place, we're going to play one more short piece. We'd love to play all night, and there'll be many other nights to come. And being with all of you is like being all night and something that we'll treasure, and we hope that you had a good time. And we thank Jamie Cassady and her husband for coming all the way to Denver to honor us. And Matt, who's a pretty extraordinary person. And when someone said to me, they said, man, you were 85 years old or something 2 years ago or 3 years ago when you were in that boat. Didn't you get tired for 15 hours? I said, well, anytime anyone in the boat would ask me that, I'd say, look at him, because he was out there paddling. And every time I thought, what am I going to say to his family when they have to drag him, you know, the Coast Guard have to come out and pick him up. I thought, my goodness, he's going to either get eaten by a shark or go down there. Suddenly, he would burst out of the water and go, man, this is great! And then he'd go back and paddle. So it was a wonderful experience being there, and he's also a wonderful writer and keeps a lot of great cultural stuff happening in Boulder, and one of the amazing people that live here and give us all a Rocky Mountain high wherever we are. So we're going to play one tune that was kind of emblematic of the era and music that Neal introduced Jack Kerouac and many people to. He not only knew a great friend of his wife Carolyn's love of this extraordinary person who spoke 17 different languages. What a guy. And also was a great mentor, but was a favorite of Neal's. And finally, decades later, Carolyn had moved to London. She ran into the great Slim Galliard, whom Jack had written about. And Neal used to always come and listen to Slim with Carolyn. And 20-some years later, I was visiting her in Bracknell, England, and she told me she ran into Slim Galliard. He remembered her immediately, remembered Neal, and remembered the song that they loved. And they were both in an extraordinary literary club. And now, I don't know if it's a secret or not, but if it is, don't tell anybody. Jamie's going to be writing a book describing a lot of the things that her mom, who was a fantastic person and went to Denver U, I believe, also gave to all of us and a new generation of people when all the stuff of that era was an era where painters, poets, musicians, and everyday people, which we all are, except for Bigfoot and the people from outer space, all got together and hung out. She was one of those people who tried to show the value of what Neal, what Jack, what everybody was about, and the value of young people today trying to work hard and be creative and all that good stuff. She was a pretty extraordinary person and a great mentor to all of us to try to clean up our acts and behave ourselves. And I think she's slowly succeeding, at least with the younger generation that she met. So we'd like to do this to dedicate that to her memory, and to Neal, and to Jack, and to everyone in Denver, and all the people who heard the great Charlie Parker. And this is a song called Now's the Time. And I'd just like to conclude by saying when I met him in 1952, I was a 21-year-old hick living in a basement apartment in Washington, D.C. He came down, just hung out, and he always mentored younger people. And I said, Bird, that was his nickname, what's it like, man, writing something so long ago, because he'd written it in 1945, here it was 1952, 7 years later, and for a 21-year-old, 7 years is a third of your life. So that's a long time when you're 21. He said, no, he said, this song will always be relevant. He said, because now was, is, and always will be the time, because now is the right time. Well, we hate to rush off like this when the party is swinging, don't you know? But in 364 days, we're going to be back at the Merc for another Neal Cassady show. So until then, we bid you adieu and say amen. And thank all of you for coming here, the only place to go, where they've got poetry, philosophy, and all the creative people in Denver for the last 40 years had a paradise for them. An oasis in the sea of mediocrity, the place where we hope we can always come back again. So 3 cheers for the Merc and all it entails. And we only want to say in our final wails, as Woody Guthrie said, so long it's been good to know you, but we're gonna come back, you know. Until then, we bid you adieu for these great musicians who played during the show. For Mr. Hugh Ragin and Artie Moore and Mr. Smith on the drums, you couldn't ask for more. So good night, ladies, and good night, gentlemen, too. It's been such a joy to be back in the Rockies, play for all of you. And in order that your poetry can be heard, we're going to take this out from the song from Bird. Thank you for Mr. Hugh Ragin. And the fabulous man with amazing grace who brings a smile to every face each time he plays the bass, Mr. Artie Moore. And the famous Smith brothers, most distinguished Smith of them all, master drummer, and finally got to play with him after all these years, Denver's own Mr. Kevin Smith. And for Neal Cassady and all of you, stay creative.